Hello everybody and welcome back to the Gaming Mix podcast, your official podcast from analogstickgaming.com. Obviously, if you don't know me by now, my name is Jordan. I am one of the co-owners of the website, and we have to my left, as always, the founder of analogstickgaming.com, Jeff. How are you, Jeff?
Oh, not too bad. I'm pretty kind of awake this morning and stuff like that. I've got Sugar, our official cat of Analog Stick Gaming, just right here. You'll probably see her whiskers every now and then.
We are trying to get this episode out to you the same day of recording because, as you may tell from the thumbnail, we're going to be doing some predictions for the upcoming Xbox Showcase, but also for Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest show, which at time of recording I believe is in about 7 hours time, something like that. So
yeah, I think it's at like 3 to 5 or something.
Yeah, so
time anyway.
We'll see how that is. He's been playing down expectations for that, so we'll get into that later on. But we're going to open up by talking about some wrestling, as we've done the last few weeks, because obviously Jeff is a new fan, kind of returning fan, but we can also
returning fan, because
we can also tie it into some gaming this week, can't we, Jeff? So
Raw is eventually is kind of leading up to Clash at the Castle, and as is the case with most of the like non-big pay-per-views, so like not SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, so things like Backlash and stuff like that, is you get a certain amount of build-up and then there's like a lull. Yeah. And Raw was that lull.
Yeah, we hit it. Yeah.
Because all the stuff that they were doing with Chad Gable and stuff has just been so drawn out and so boring, and it almost came to a head. But I think like with Clash at the Castle, I think you're going to have that turn finally pay off.
I think so as well. Yeah, I think so. I'm going to Clash at the Castle as well, so I guess while we're on the subject, that means there will be no episode next week. So, make sure you're subscribed and everything to keep up to date of when the next episode is coming. It should be 2 weeks from now, but we'll see how we get on. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But like you said, that latest episode of Raw was just a little bit slow, and it felt like not much happened, really.
No, because you had essentially the build up with Damian Priest and all that kind of stuff. Like that match was kind of prepped for that, and most of the other matches just were not terribly interesting. They were starting to build up like the Liv Morgan stuff, which has been fine for what it is. I think the Sheamus and Ludwig match was not that enjoyable. The Finn Balor, Dragon Lee. I think the Braun Breaker and Ricochet match was fine, but if anybody was thinking Ricochet was going to win, I don't know what show you're watching.
To kind of tie it into gaming and to make a gaming comparison for people that are maybe not familiar with wrestling, this kind of felt like a filler quest that you might have in a video game. You know how we talk about those elements of filler? This was like a filler episode of wrestling.
Well, it also feels like kind of like the typical story mode you find in a wrestling game, where like it's very low impact kind of stuff.
Yes.
Because I ended up getting WWE 2K24. I ended up getting it for like $40. And like it's one of those games where it's like some of those character models like look fantastic.
Yes.
And then like Liv Morgan doesn't look anything like Liv Morgan. And and I don't know, I kind of wish that you could go in, and I don't know if you can, let me know if you can. If you could go in and give like Rhea Ripley like her modern hair, because she has that kind of border.
I'm not sure if you can edit their hair, but I know that you can give them like updated attires and that kind of thing. So if you go on the community creations, a lot of people have updated their looks. However, I'm not sure that you can update their hair specifically. I think that one might be off limits.
Mm.
but I'd have to check because it's been a while since I've played the game, so I can't actually remember for sure on that one.
Yeah, and like I was kind of disappointed to find out that Jade Cargo is like DLC. Um, and even then, like all the Jade Cargos that are on the community creation just look like extreme versions of themselves. Like if you were like just they look really, really. Some of them look really bad.
I think that what you have to remember is Jade technically didn't make her WWE debut until the Royal Rumble, and CM Punk made his debut 2 months before that, and he wasn't even in the base game. So it's kind
Yeah,
of one of those things where it's like they clearly have a cut-off date because of how quickly they turn around these games, which, to their credit, is actually quite impressive.
yeah,
I've never seen games turn around quite so fast for how much they
yeah. Like
actually do.
I don't know. I kind of wish that these games and stuff, they're like, okay, we're gonna start building like Rhea Ripley in like March, and we're gonna be releasing the game the following May.
Hmm.
Where do you think Rhea Ripley is going to be around that time in regards to like look and all that kind of stuff so that we can update it and be a little bit more
Yeah.
current? Because that's the problem is like there's some of these um, wrestlers that don't look anything like what they are now. Because I think even like Kelsey Green, I think doesn't even have like that look. I think she's still blonde in the game.
Yeah, it's really strange, and I think it's an unfortunate reality of doing this kind of game where, unless they go for a more live service model, I don't think this will ever be fixed. And I've said it before, and several other people in the community have said it as well. Even Greg Miller on Kinda Funny, who has obviously actually done some work for WWE. Um, and it's just like I will never really call for a live service game, but this game should be a live service game, and
Yeah, because like
you should
it,
have a team that is specifically there to update the wrestlers' looks, even if they're still outdated for a little while, right? Even if they're still outdated for maybe a month or two or something like that. If you had a
what
specific team that was updating them every 2 to 3 months,
yeah,
I think that would
I
be
think if you
amazing.
have like quarterly updates where the DLC is maybe like $15
Yeah,
and it basically updates the entire roster up until that point,
yeah,
and then adds a few additional quests through like their a year like the road to WrestleMania type of story mode.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, do something like that because then if you're doing quarterly updates for $15 a month, that's almost the price of the full game by
yeah,
the end of the year,
yeah,
and you're doing way less work. And then you just release a base version of that game
yeah.
like
And then
every 3 years.
every sort of 3 years or so, you can do like a massive upgrade of, okay, we're now making a jump and we're offering something new, so you now have to
Yeah,
buy this new base game, and then do you know what I mean? I'm not saying they have to go free to play with the base game, because I think that would be too much of an ask, but I think that
yeah,
you could charge 60 instead of 70, for example, and
yeah,
then you could be like, okay, but we're gonna have this,
yeah.
DLC thing.
And and if you do like that $15 a month, whatever, you can also have like a 3 month battle pass added to that. Whereas you're doing matches and do like that, you're unlocking new hairstyles, you're unlocking new pieces, you're unlocking new kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Because this is the kind of game that like if you can do a cosmetic battle pass, or even like where the characters that you are unlocking, like the DLC characters, would be at like the 50% mark and the 100% mark for the battle pass. So if you want CM Punk, you get him halfway during that pack,
Yeah.
and then at the very end, you would get like I don't know, like a different like J Cargo or whatever like
Hmm.
that. You would get like that kind of thing and stuff like that. So like I think that that kind of game breeds well for that type of thing.
I agree, and it's I I wouldn't say that about many other games, but I really
Yeah.
think that if you handle it the right way with a wrestling game, it would actually be really good. It's just it's just finding that right balance of how to handle that sort of system. But I also think the problem is they'll never do it because it it takes too many resources and too much time. And I think that they think, oh well, we can sell a game every year that is slightly
Honestly,
outdated, and it doesn't
I
really
think that
matter.
they would make more money
I do,
because like
I do,
you would get half the team essentially working on those updates for the 3 years, and then the other team working on like the base game for that next thing for
I
the three
agree.
years,
And
and then you get way more polished.
and look, I'm a bigger fan. I'm a bigger fan than most people, but if they said to me, yeah, every 3 months pay 15 and we'll update the entire game and add a couple of new people and things like that, I would do it. Like I would gladly do that. Even do you know what? They could actually go as far as if they said $10 a month. I would probably pay that as well, depending on how substantial these quarterly updates were. If they tied it in with a battle pass type system as well, I probably would engage with it, and not only that, but it would give the game more replay value, which would have people playing it for longer. So I think you're right. They would make a lot more money, but it's one of those things. So other than wrestling, have we been doing anything else outside of gaming that we'd like to talk about?
Um, no, actually, been kind of a boring kind of week because I've just been like hunkered down, popping out like freaking 4 reviews probably since the last episode. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, other than obviously what we're going to be talking about here with
Yes.
games that we've been playing, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
we'll
But
get to games
they
we've been
announced,
playing later in the show, of course.
yeah,
But there is one thing I'll talk about before we move on to the news, because we have a couple of news pieces. But some people like TV, and if you're looking for a good TV show, I've recently been watching or catching up on an Apple TV show called Trying, which is kind of this drama comedy, which is about two people that are basically in the process of trying to adopt children. And for me, as someone who was actually adopted and has kind of, my parents are also, they've been foster carers for a really long time, having the having the connection with that sort of system and knowing some of the things that happen, it's really interesting to see. But the way I would describe the comedy is, if you've watched Ted Lasso and you like that kind of comedy, it's a similar sort of show where it's more about the people and what they're going through than it is about the actual core subject.
mm.
And also Ben Starr shows up in it, which was a nice surprise. So yeah, he
Yeah, he's
shows up
showing
in
up
the
in
show
a
for
lot
a
of
few
things
episodes.
because we don't have it on
Yes,
the news docket or anything, but
there's a big
Alice
update to
Holland.
a game. Yeah,
Yeah, Alice Holland is seeing like a massive revamp. Like they're rebuilding chunks of the campaign. They're adding a whole bunch of new encounters. I saw a cutscene of like some new boss. Ben Starr apparently is in it. I don't know exactly where. Um, but I think I'm gonna replay through this whole game.
I think I probably am as well. So,
Yeah, yeah, I'll
yeah,
have to jump through and do co-op on it. But
yeah. Because
yeah, I mean,
I actually tweeted
massive
that
overhaul.
out. I tweeted that out last night, and the studio liked it. But my tweet, I essentially said, it's really nice to see this kind of game getting the support and resources to actually listen to feedback and improve upon itself, because
Yeah.
this isn't something we see very often. Normally
No, this
games
is
that,
like a one and done kind of game. Like you
yeah,
see that with live service games because they need to keep that carrot kind of like there.
Yeah,
But
and you also see it with massive AAA games because they can't afford to fail, right? So they have to kind of try and turn themselves around. But with games of this stature, normally it's, oh, it comes out and it's decent, but it has some issues, and then they leave it and move on to the next thing. And
yeah,
here,
it's kind of like they were trying to do with Anthem, where
y-
Anthem Next was kind of going to be like what this is being done for
yeah,
Atlas Fallen. So it's impressive to
yeah,
see.
and I believe that's coming out in August, so not too long away. But
August
yeah, we'll check
6th, I
that out.
think.
Yeah, we'll check that out for sure. Um, let's go to the news now, but I want to start with the one that is somewhat TV adjacent, which is obviously a very famous video game franchise is getting a live adaptation over on Amazon, I believe.
Yeah, so a live action version of Like a Dragon Yakuza is set to come to Amazon Prime Video. It's kind of weird that they kind of have the Yakuza label in there,
Yeah,
you know, just because essentially this is just saying like a dragon, like a dragon.
yeah.
Um, but it is what it is. As reported by Variety, the live action series will consist of 6 episodes, with the first 3 releasing on October 25th and the final 3 releasing on November 1st. The show, which is produced in Japan, will be available in its original Japanese language with subtitles or a dubbed voiceover. It will take place over 2 time periods, 1995 and 2005, and follows the life of childhood friends and repercussions of the decisions of a fearsome and peerless Yakuza warrior with a strong sense of justice, duty, and humanity. The show is directed by Masahura Taki, people know for 100 Yen Love, and Kengo Takamoto, common teacher, and will star Ryoma Tekushi, who's also from Kamen Rider, as Kiryu Kazuma. Um, right here. So Masayoshi Yokoyama, the studio head of Like a Dragon developer RGG, is the executive producer on the show. So you have some of the essentially the creative force kind of behind the show being RGG. Since the day I put pen to paper on the original Yakuza script, I never once thought about revisiting any of my work on the series, Yokoyama said in a statement. It is because I understand all too well the challenges and hardships that come with remaking a finished title. However, if I were ever sent to the past through some type of cosmic joke, this is the experience I'd want to create. If I had to go through the ringer anyhow, I'd want to make the most engaging version of Kamurocho and Kiro Kazuma as I could, and this show has it all. While the games let you experience the world through the subjective lens, this adaptation will be ultimately objective way to enjoy the show. I have no doubt that fans of the series will be drawn to how it brings the games to life and adds new surprises. Newcomers, I'm sure, will find themselves invested simply in the gritty realism of the show. So, Jordan, are we excited for episode 3 to be the running Kazuma running a bar and like the girl sitting there with the drinks and all that kind of stuff? Like it's just like it's that mini game for episode 3.
I mean, they're gonna have something to kind of tie that in, aren't they? Because this is the weird one. I'm really interested to see how they tackle this because don't get me wrong, the main story in these games is always really good. Like they
Yeah,
do tell really good stories, but so much of what makes these games special are the crazy things you can do. And
yeah,
I'm
like people running around their underpants or like buying a what is a porn magazine for a kid, or maybe that was Judgment. I can't remember.
yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm so I'm really interested to see how they actually tackle that stuff because we saw with Amazon when they're involved and they were involved in Fallout and that team that did that show knew how to get the tone right. So
exactly. Like you knew that was going to be the perfect show when it said brought to you by the studio who introduced 3-day shipping. Like that is the perfect way to let your fans know that we understand what we're doing here.
yeah,
And you know, it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see that like this type of thing, coming out because again, like it is Amazon Prime, so like they've got the fundamentals down of how do we actually make an adaptation.
Yeah.
And
And what
Fallout
and what I like
showed it.
about Amazon as well is they are in games themselves. So I think they want to be respectful of gamers. Whereas I think that some of these adaptations have been more focused on we're not really making this for gamers, we're making it for people who don't play games. And
Yeah.
that isn't a bad thing, but that can lead to situations like Halo, where you get people involved that don't really care or understand the games, and
And the
then make
and this
something crazy.
yeah, and the stupid thing with the Halo show is if you would have made it authentic, if you would have made it where it was like what a Halo fan thinks of when they think of a TV series or a movie or whatever, you then already have an installed base of millions of people that are going to tune in and watch your show. You've done that. That's the easy part,
Yeah.
is getting the fans of it. The hard part is getting non-gamers to care about it. And I don't think those shows did, like Halo did, none of that.
No. No. Whereas Fallout, by contrast, did, right? And it did it while
Yes,
respecting the gamers because it brought in that audience by default, and then it brought in other people because they heard how good it was. So,
you like when you do an original tale as well too, you're not tied to the games, which is why like for me, like my favorite adaptation of a video game ever is Arcane, and they've just shown off a trailer for Arcane season 2.
I still haven't
You
watched
know,
Arcane, Jeff.
oh, dude, it's the best thing I've ever fucking seen. It's so good.
I'm gonna have to watch it at some point
And hey,
because
the connection to Fallout is the girl that is the lead in Fallout plays Jinx in Arcane. So,
so it
you know,
has to be good, right?
exactly. Ellie Purnell, like there's nothing,
But
that's
there's a
bad
lot
about it.
of these. While we're on this bit of news, though, I wanna do a little bit of a tangent here because there's a lot of these live action adaptations coming up. I think we know that Gears of War, in some sense, is being worked on by Netflix. I'm waiting to see what happens with that. Obviously, we might hear about more Gears of War games soon, so we'll talk about that later. But Gears of War with Netflix, I think that either Netflix or Amazon is doing God of War as well. I can't remember which one's doing which. One of them's doing God of War and one's doing Horizon.
Each have their own GOW.
um, so it's going to be really interesting to see. But what I wanted to ask you, Jeff, is away from Arcane, out of these ones that haven't received adaptations yet, that we do know are kind of in the pipeline, which one are you most excited about, and which one do you think has the potential to be the most successful?
I think the Tomb Raider one might do well. Just because like again, you have a fan essentially doing it. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think Tomb Raider probably is going to do well. Gears of War, like, if it goes that route, I just don't want Batista as
You
Marcus
don't.
Phoenix.
You don't. I really
No.
do. I really do.
I'm not a Batista fan. Like it's
Okay.
one of those things where like he hasn't done a role that has made me like
Love
see
him,
him
right?
as
Yeah.
as the actor that everybody else does. Like I had that same thing with like, Tom Hanks and Nicolas Cage. Like it took a particular movie for me to
Interesting.
be like, okay, I get their appeal
So,
now.
so when was the time that
Um,
you understood Tom Hanks? I need to know this.
it was I it was the second film of that Dan Brown series.
Oh yes.
I
Not
think it was Angels and Demons.
Angels and Demons. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure where I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And then since then I've been okay as a fan. Like before I was like couldn't care
Interesting.
less. And
Interesting.
I think with Nicolas Cage, I think it was National Treasure.
Oh wow. Okay.
and everyone would be like, "Oh, it's Face Off and Con Air and blah blah blah." I'm like, yeah, he was in that movie,
For
you know,
me, for
but
me with Nicolas Cage, it was Con Air. It was definitely Con Air for me with Nicolas Cage, and with Tom Hanks, it was probably Castaway. I really like Castaway because I think Wilson the volleyball is like the greatest movie character of all time. So,
yeah.
yeah, but I'm looking forward to these adaptations. I do think, as you said, the Tomb Raider one will probably be a very good one because, again, that is Amazon, I believe, doing that, and they have
What is
fans involved.
what is a adaptation that you still want to happen?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I've got one.
Ooh, I, off the top of my head, I'm not sure. So if you've got one, you go first, and I'll have a think.
I think that you get Elias Tefexis to be the live action Adam Jensen,
Okay.
and you do a Deus Ex, like Human Revolution, Mankind Divided, like adaptation. Um, because I mean, dude's an actor, like he's been in a lot of things, and he's also the voice of the character. Plus, I mean, having like another kind of like cyberpunk kind of series and stuff like that, because like, and I would get the same people who made, um, what was that series that Netflix did? Um, what is it? I am Anthony Mackie ended up taking over it
Oh,
for season two.
oh, I know the one you mean. Oh, what's it called?
Altered
Oh,
Carbon.
Altered Carbon.
If
Yeah,
you have that, if you have that team make like a Deus Ex
that would be cool.
TV series.
That would be cool. So I have, so I've actually thought of two. Um, One of them I think is more likely than the other, but I do think they would both be really cool. So obviously Splinter Cell is like I would like to see some kind of Splinter Cell adaptation just because I think there is a really strong story built in there with Sam Fisher already, and I think there's a lot of things you can do. But the other one is another Ubisoft one, which I think most people won't even think about, but it's Watch Dogs. I actually think there's a lot of stuff you could
They're
do
doing
with
a Watch
Watch
Dogs
Dogs.
movie
Oh, are they? Okay, that's
or a
interesting.
series. Yeah, they actually announced the cast.
Interesting.
Um,
Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff you can do within that universe. There's a lot of things you can do with DedSec, and with all three games being so different as well, I don't think you're tied to one particular story necessarily, but you might just have certain characters show up that are in the games. So that
yeah,
would
they
be
just announced
interesting.
Hunger Games actor Tom Blythe and Talk to Me's C, according to So they've announced
Interesting.
two people
Okay.
so far. So Christy LeBlanc wrote the script's original draft, and new revisions have been handled by Victoria Botta. Um, yeah, so it's word of a live-action Watch Dogs movie arrived in March.
Well, there we go. But maybe that will end up like the live action Division thing that never actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird that Ubisoft is kind of like, we're going to cancel the Division thing. We're going to cancel the Division game that they were making that looked freaking awesome. And then they release X Defiant, where out of the 14 maps,
Most
like
of it's Division.
13 of them were Division maps. Because like I mentioned in my review, like there's one Far Cry map, there's one Splinter Cell map, there's like one Watch Dogs map,
hmm
there's one Ghost Recon map, and then the other 10 maps are all from the Division.
Yeah, yeah. It is a bit crazy, but I will be reviewing that game as well. Jeff has his review up on our site now. I'll be reviewing it for Outer Haven. I just haven't got to it yet because I was a bit unwell this week. So look out for that soon. But Jeff, let's get to some more video game news. So shall we?
Sure. A quick news piece is that Marvel's Midnight Suns is now free on Epic Game Store. Um, Normally with some of these games and stuff, they can be whatever it is because I think like the next game is gonna be Red Out 2, the one before that was Chivalry 2. Like there is something to be said about some games are kind of missable, but I mean again, they're free. Download them, add them to your library. Who cares? Midnight Suns is fantastic. A lot of people were kind of thrown off by like the card system, assuming that it was a card game. It's not. The cards are just basically how you choose your attacks because what it does is it shuffles your attacks, and in the best way of illustrating that is through a card system. Because if they just had a standard like attack system and stuff like XCOM and stuff like that, there would have been no way of really showing that randomness to your abilities better than what they've done with the card system. And that game is great. The story's great. I mean, the kind of dating sim type of stuff is like I think hit or miss. Blade and the Book Club to woo Captain Marvel is like I don't know who approved that, but there is some weird things in that game that you can choose to interact with. But like the story, like the characters, like the combat, like that game is just certainly
Uh,
well worth trying,
so I played a few
especially for
hours of
free.
the game back when it released, and what I would say is I enjoyed the combat and I enjoyed the core sort of gameplay aspects. But for me, I think the story and the way that certain characters were portrayed just didn't
Yeah,
grab me quite enough to make me go back to the game.
there are a few things where like Blade is a bit more too chummy, I think, in that game. I've never been a fan of the Vincent Price Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like again, like there is something weird about seeing like characters just wearing like t-shirts and jeans and like chilling on the couch and like, oh, I'm gonna read a book. Like, hey, let's go out and go painting. Like that kind of stuff.
I
I think
guess I guess at least
they
we
could have
know what
scrapped all of that.
at least we know what Arcane Leon's blade is gonna be. He's just gonna read books and go get
Yeah,
his
no,
haircut.
again, aside from all of that character bullshit stuff that they do, the gameplay in that game is so freaking fun. Like,
And look,
go and download that
for
game
free
and
as
play it.
well, you can't go wrong.
Yeah,
Like you might as well try it.
and I
So
and I and honestly, I suggest like waiting for the DLC to go on sale or cheap or whatever it is because like you add like Venom, Morbius, Deadpool, Storm. Um, I think there's one more character for the DLC. Maybe it's Moon Knight. I'm not sure. But no, fantastic game. I strongly suggest downloading it and just giving it a shot. Um, okay, so the Silent Hill 2 remake would have had more changes made to it if the original game's creators had had their way. According to Motoi Okamoto, the producer of the remake, who spoke about making the game in a new Famitsu interview. Okamoto said that some of the original Silent Hill 2 staff wanted to make numerous changes, but Bloober Team, the studio handling the remake, challenged some of the requests. After being asked if it was difficult to strike a balance between adding something new while retaining the best elements of the original, Okamoto replied, "That's right." But actually, he added, as translated by BDGC, the Japanese staff, including Masahiro Ito, the designer who worked on the original version, and Akira Yamaoka, the sound designer, said, "We wanted to change this part," while on the other hand, Bloober Team often replied saying, "No, we don't want to change this." Sometimes the opinions clash, but in the end, I think we managed to get it right. I think if you see in the latest trailer that while it's been reborn in a modern style, we've retained the good qualities of the original version. When asked why the original staff were so keen to make the changes, they suggested that they wanted to use the opportunity to mix things up instead of retracing their steps. After all, game creators don't want to make the same thing they've created all over again. They don't want to have people playing the same thing. That's why a lot of the changes they wanted to there were a lot of changes they wanted to completely change in the remake. But in the end, thanks to the opinions of Bloober Team, who are big fans of the original, the remake ended up being highly respectful of the original game. If we had formed a development team entirely in Japan, it might have turned out to be a completely different remake. So it says here, the Silent Hill 2 remake has been the subject of much debate since its announcement, with a second trailer, which, while focused on combat, did nothing to quell it. Um, I am very hesitant on checking this out. Like, I want to because I like Silent Hill 2, but also at the same time, I don't think Bloober Team has made an amazing game. I think they've made good games.
Mm-hmm.
But the bulk of their good games have had very little character interaction. Things like Layers of Fear 2, even their one sci-fi game that they released had very little character interaction. This one here is all that,
Yeah.
and I think the character models look really bad. I think the facial animation looks really bad. I don't know. I'm really sketchy on this, and I think that Bloober Team not making choices comes down to they probably knew that if they did, they were going to fuck it up.
Yeah, probably. What I would say is their entire inspiration for basically every game they've ever made is Silent Hill 2. And that does give me some level of faith that if any team could get it right, it's probably them in terms of going for an as respectful remake as possible. I think if you want a remake that is different and makes considerable changes, like a Final Fantasy VII remake, for example, that would be a different conversation. But if you're looking for a kind of faithful one-to-one style remake, I do have at least some hope that Bloober Team can deliver on that. But I do agree with you that based on what we've seen and based on their history so far, they haven't made a great game yet. They've made some good games and some games that had potential but didn't quite come off in the way that they wanted them to. And these character models do look a bit weird. But
Yeah, like they changed like the one girl almost entirely, like based on what she kind of looked in the original game. Like she just looks almost like she looks so different that I actually thought they brought a new character into this game. And they also changed the other girl's like outfit, so she doesn't have that Christina Aguilera outfit anymore.
yeah,
And a lot of
yeah,
fans are kind of ticked off on that because it's like you give Sunderland the same outfit that he had before, but then you change her. Um, you know,
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. Like
It's an
I'm looking
interesting
forward
one.
to the game,
It's an
but
interesting one.
honestly, I I'm probably just gonna wait for a sale on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll be picking it up day one.
Yeah,
Because it also comes out in October, right? Which is around my birthday, and I imagine there's going to be lots of other games coming out in October fairly soon that we'll hear about over the next couple of days here.
yeah,
So yeah, I think it might get lost in the shuffle a little bit, which is a shame. But I'm interested enough that I'll keep an eye on it, and if it is something that reviews very well, then I'll probably pick it up more quickly. But if it kind of comes out to middling reception, I will probably wait for a sale on it as well.
yeah. I'm probably guessing around a 73 on Metacritic.
Interesting guess. I'm gonna go with a 75.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be kind of mid to low 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. So Dragon Age Dreadwolf gets a new name, and with a gameplay reveal next week. So the fourth game in the Dragon Age series will now be known as Dragon Age: The Veilguard. The studio has also announced that the first official gameplay reveal will be on June 11th, showing approximately 15 minutes of gameplay. In a blog post, they announced that, sort of in a blog post explaining the name change, the game's executive producer, Gary McKay, said the Dreadwolf title didn't fit with the game's main theme. And although Solus, the Dreadwolf, will remain the main villain, it's the hero and their supporting party who are the most important element of the game. At BioWare, we create worlds of adventure, conflict, and companionship, where you're at the center of it all. As fans of our franchise know, every Dragon Age game has delivered a new standalone story. Set in the world of Thedas, these tales explore epic locales and threats, always thrusting you into a new conflict. Each game will also introduces a new hero, from the Warden, Hawk, and the Inquisitor, that you can call your own. You can expect all of that and more with a new game. And of course, much like your unique hero, it wouldn't be a Dragon Age game without an amazing cast of companions. Each of the 7 unique characters that will make up your companions will have deep and compelling stories where the decisions you make will impact your relationships with them, as well as their lives. You'll unite this team of unforgettable heroes as you take on a terrifying new threat unleashed upon the world. Naturally, the Dreadwolf still has an important part in this tale, but you and your companions, not your enemies, are at the heart of this new experience. So, to capture what this game is all about, we changed the name as the original title didn't show how strongly we feel about our new heroes, their story, and how you'll need to bring them together to save all of Thedos. Um,
I don't
so
like
yeah,
the
like
new name.
I'm
I think the old name
yeah
was better.
yeah I think with the old name, it it does give the story the focus where it is essentially about around the Dreadwolf, but they've also confirmed that Solus is not the only bad guy.
Hmm.
You know,
I mean, I
um,
understand. Don't get me wrong. I do understand the name change. I just
yeah.
think purely from a kind of marketing and PR standpoint, I think that original name was a better name. Like, I don't know. It's stuck in my mind more, and maybe that's just because we heard it longer. But to me, it stood out more as a really cool name for a video game.
I think the um I think the Veil Guard has a better marketing appeal
Interesting.
because you have a trailer that then shows you and your characters and stuff and all the companions building up that blah blah.
True.
And then you just have that line wherever like that. It's like you will not stop the Veil Guard, and then it cuts to like the logo or something.
Hmm.
Like I think it has that appeal for those companions because again, the companions have been some of the best moments of Bioware games. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, especially with the possibility that this game's coming out this year. Um, so obviously the marketing hasn't kind of been issued out to
Yes.
areas that are going to potentially leak it or anything like that. Like you're not having like you know
I
Dreadwolf
think I
T-shirts
think
showing up.
they also had to get this statement out because on the other day on Kind of Funny, Jeff Grubb was on there and he kind of said that Dragon Age will show up in the Xbox showcase, but it won't be Dreadwolf. So he kind of alluded to the fact that the name was changing.
Mm.
And then I think they probably were like, okay, we have to get this news out there. Because what I suspect is going to happen, given that it felt like they had reacted to that, is I suspect there's going to be an initial trailer probably during the Xbox showcase for the game. And then it will say tune in for the gameplay reveal at whatever time it is on the 11th, which is a few days later.
Yeah, so that means we're probably getting a either an in-engine cutscene or a CG piece.
Yeah, yeah, I'd imagine so. And that's kind of similar to what they did for Star Wars Outlaws last year, right? They actually announced that game during the Xbox showcase, but then the gameplay and stuff was shown in UB Forward the next day. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Ooh.
Alrighty.
What other news do we have?
So yeah, so this one's kind of weird. Um, Rocksteady Studios is currently helping to develop an unannounced Hogwarts Legacy director's cut. That's according to a new Bloomberg report charting the troubled development of the studio's live service flop Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League, on which the parent company Warner Brothers has taken a $200 million loss. Weeks after the title's disappointing launch in February, Warner Brothers Games boss David Haddard reportedly visited Rocksteady's London office to deliver an update on its plans for the studio. Haddad is said to have used an all-hands meeting to inform staff that the company wanted to do more collaboration between its dozen studios which also includes TT Games, NetherRealm Studios, Monolith Productions, Warner Brothers Games Montreal, Avalanche Software, and Warner Brothers Games Boston. He said Warner's Games business was relatively understaffed compared to other publishers and that it wasn't planning to cut jobs at Rocksteady. According to Bloomberg, a large number of Rocksteady developers are currently working on a new version of Hogwarts Legacy, which sold over 24 million copies since its release last February. The Harry Potter spin-off, which was 2023's best-selling game, ahead of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, received a free summer update today. Following the Batman Arkham Studio struggles in the live service space, it's claimed that Rocksteady leaders are also planning to pitch a new single-player title to Warner Brothers Games. So here you have Rocksteady, who produced the Batman Arkham trilogy and became one of the most looked after, sought-out developers across the entire industry.
Yes.
Is now a support studio.
Essentially, that's what it sounds like, right? Or they're at least supporting until they pitch their next game.
Yeah.
Which,
but still,
that is a shame. I would recommend that Jason Schreier had a report recently about what actually happened with Suicide Squad and why that game sort of turned out the way that it did. And rather predictably, it sounds like the higher-ups were probably the issue. So go and read that.
The whole tweet thing with him has been hilarious because some guy's like, "Why didn't you report about all the Sweet Baby Ink stuff?" Blah blah blah. He's like, "Because this is a report of the shit that actually happened."
Yeah.
That is so funny.
So it is a shame to see, but the other part of this news is that if they are gearing up to pitch a new single player game, I'm really excited to see what that is in the future. And then the weirdest thing is, why do we even need a director's cut of Hogwarts?
I think it's the exact same thing as splitting up the last movies into two movies. It just means more income.
True.
And if they do a director's cut, they'll just combine both sales.
Yeah.
When they're talking about the general number of all of it.
That's true. So it almost makes it seem more popular than
bet.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a shame. But I'd like to see them just work on a new thing. Like, as in, even if it's a Hogwarts 2, I'd rather see that than spending time doing this director's cut, which probably isn't needed.
The original developers are probably working on that.
Yeah.
Because, why would you not have them work on the director's cut?
True. And hopefully, this doesn't occupy Rocksteady for too long, because I feel like that there is a chance that studio might not, they might shed a lot of staff soon, given that we know the original founders of the studio have now started their own studio and are working with Xbox, which we reported on in the last episode. It's just there's a lot of interesting things going on, and hopefully they don't, hopefully Rocksteady don't disappear, because they deserve another opportunity to make the type of game that they're actually known and loved for. And I'd love to see what that next thing is, for sure.
All right. So 2 more pieces of news here. So this story is something that I kind of predicted a while ago. And that is Sony Interactive Entertainment has high hopes of enticing PC players to PS5, but continue to release its tentpole single-player games for console first. While its live service games will be released simultaneously for PS5 and PC, console players will continue to receive early access to Sony's narrative-driven titles. So they had an interview, sort of a joint CEO type of interview during a strategy business briefing on Thursday. And basically, kind of what it came down to is this thing where they'll release the first game on PC, hoping to entice players then to jump to PS5 to play those sequels. And PC audiences have generally been like, "Nah, we'll wait."
Yeah, that isn't going to happen.
No, PC players, even on Twitter, they're like, "Wait, you want us to jump to PS5? You want us to essentially play it on inferior hardware?"
Yeah.
No PC player is going to spend $600 to play a game that they play.
The only way that will happen is if it's someone who already has a PlayStation 5 that also plays on PC, they might have waited for the PC version of the first game, and then if they enjoy it enough, they might go, okay, I don't want to wait for the sequel. But you're not going to get people buying PS5s to play a sequel of a game. I also think it is interesting that the way they framed it was very much as a, for now, this is what our strategy is. And I think that that is part of them kind of taking this slow walk towards eventually everything will be day one on PC, I would imagine. There was, and I was going to talk about this game later because I think it will show up probably today, and that is the rumored Horizon Lego game. But there has been a leak, and that sounds like it's your typical Lego game, so single player or co-op. But that sounds like it's going to be a game that's released day one on PC as well as PlayStation. So it's like, if the way they're framing this as well doesn't mean necessarily that all single player games are not going to be day one on PlayStation.
It's kind of weird for them making a Lego Horizon game.
It is.
Like, because like you're not going to be releasing it on Switch, you're not going to be releasing it on Xbox. You're releasing it basically across two markets. I don't see that game selling well. I don't see it selling well at all. Like, if that game lifetime sales breaks 2 million, I will be shocked.
I mean, Lego does pull in the younger people, right? So that's going to help somewhat. But yeah, it is a weird one. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. But then I guess they did have that Lego set for Horizon as well, didn't they? So
yeah, I got the bastard right up there.
So maybe it should make more sense than we think. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think it's going to do well.
Yeah, and I don't think this strategy is going to do very well either. Like I said, I think more than anything, I think that them framing it this way was kind of like, we are on this road, but we're going to take it slowly because we know that you're not all ready for it yet. And I think that that's one of the mistakes that Xbox and Microsoft sometimes make, is they read where things are going, but then they force people towards that change too quickly, and they're not gradual enough with things. And I think that PlayStation are sometimes the other way, where they maybe don't come to things quite quickly enough, so they often end up behind the curve, if you like. But it's interesting that I wouldn't be surprised if by the time next generation starts, we have all PlayStation games day one on PC at the very least.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. All right, keeping on PlayStation, we'll kind of quickly go through this here. So they had the State of Play, which happened on, May 30th. So we had a bunch of things going on there. So we got to see the new Astrobot, which is kind of like a full like Mario Odyssey kind of like adventure. So you're going to have a lot of like, you have 6 galaxies across 80 levels, and you have a whole bunch of like the PlayStation like characters showing up.
I will probably be buying this game. It looks great. It looks great.
It does look really good. I don't know if I'm sold on it being 80 Canadian, I think is what it was showing at. So yeah. We also had the gameplay reveal for Concord, which is Sony's like live service 5-on-5 character thing. Apparently it's going to be like $40 US. I think this is the type of a game that would probably benefit if it was free to play. But
I think this is the type of game that's probably dead on arrival, and I'm not even trying to be harsh. Like, it is releasing on PC as well, day one, I believe. But I'm not sure that PC and PlayStation is enough to make this kind of game a success, especially when it's not free to play. I think if it was free to play, that would be a different conversation. but there are too many other options out there for people. And
Yeah, and I mean, like Marvel Rivals alone, I think is going to have like way more players than this.
yeah,
That's why, like, I put it out on Twitter. I'm like, this game is just going to get Battleborned,
yeah,
where
it
it's
really
like
is.
a flashy looking game and stuff that's just going to be completely like outshone. Outshone. So yeah, we have the God of War Ragnarok PC announcement trailer. So again, this is fans just waiting for Ragnarok. They're not going to PlayStation for it. Until Dawn got a gameplay trailer, and weirdly enough, I think this game looks worse now. Like, I don't know if it's like it's weird. The faces of the characters just look so
Something
cartoony this time
something
around.
didn't look right. I don't know what it was, but something didn't look right with it. It
Yeah, I
maybe they didn't rescan them. That's the only thing I could think is maybe they didn't rescan the people and they were hand molding it instead.
yeah, because like the faces just look so much more cartoony
Mhm.
than they did before. I'd have to see a side by side in order to be it, because my mind could just be playing tricks with me essentially on it. But it's going to be coming to PC, which was, I think, the whole reason why they did this remake, because like, you know, it's not a multiplayer game, but it had a
Also because
multiplayer
they're
community.
doing a live adaptation of it, right? This is one of the
Yeah.
so bringing it to PC and then having a live adaptation over the next year or two is kind of like they almost had to do this. They almost had no choice because the original release of this game, while successful, didn't light the world on fire, right? It didn't. It wasn't a massive thing that everybody knows of. Whereas releasing this on PC, I feel like it will probably be quite successful on PC. I could be wrong,
Mm.
but I think it's that kind of game that I can imagine a lot of streamers playing and getting their community to kind of make the decisions for them, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, but it does look weird for sure.
We had Skydance's Behemoth, which just kind of looks like Skyrim VR. Path of Exile 2 had a trailer on there as well. Monster Hunter Wilds looks fantastic and introduced the world to two more Monster Hunter waifus that have essentially broken the internet. Silent Hill 2 trailer. Alien Rogue Incursion is a new action horror VR game coming out later this year. Marvel Rivals, they announced a closed beta test that's going to be happening next month. Dynasty Warriors Origins got announced as well. Ballad of Antara, which looks kind of like an Elden Ring kind of looking game. I'm not too sure. It has almost looks like it has like multiple protagonists or something, because it had a whole bunch of focus on a bunch of characters. Infinity Nikki, which is kind of like an open world dress up adventure game. A lot of people have been kind of comparing it to like Princess Peach Showtime, but in HD. We also had Where Winds Meet, which is another looking like open world action RPG set in China. Um, yeah, like I think the state of play was fine. I don't think it was amazing. I think it showed a bunch of games that kind of looked the same. But no, I mean, like, you got Astrobot, because again, Sony announced themselves that they had no major first party games
Yeah, no, but
for the
what
rest of
I
this
will
year. So
say is I appreciate them saying that, and I think it did help to set the expectation. I think they're still having this problem where, unlike Xbox, not enough is known about PlayStation's future, and I think that that's making people slightly nervous. Um, I don't think you have a reason to be nervous if you
no,
like what if you actually like what PlayStation has done for the last decade or so, you're going to be happy. I think the reality is we heard recently from several studios finally admitting that COVID hit them on average with roughly a 2 year delay, right? For any projects that were in development around that time. And I think the reality is this period is just the COVID delays catching up on PlayStation Studios pipeline. Um, and I think that they're just not ready to talk about certain things yet. I think you might hear about one or two things in Summer Games Fest as well, because let's remember that some of their bigger news they tend to keep for Jeff Keighley here and there. Like, he had the reveal of the Last of Us Part 1 kind of remake, re-release thing. So he might, I imagine, personally, that will be my first prediction, and we can kind of go into that now. Do we have any news left?
No, that's pretty much. I mean, no, that is pretty much it. Yeah, that
Fair
is
enough.
everything I've got on the dock.
Well, so let's go into Summer Games Fest predictions, because obviously that is tonight. I think Jeff Keighley's
Sure.
been playing down kind of expectations a little bit. He said that he's at an 8 out of 10 level of hype, but he also said that there's not going to be anything massive. There's no one more thing kind of moment either. He's confirmed that certain games definitely won't be there. But I do think my first prediction is that this Lego Horizon thing will probably show up at Summer Games Fest later on today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 2K is going to have a big presence as well. Um, so I think like we could get a few things. I think we're going to get a new trailer for Borderlands.
Yeah.
And I think that then that will lead into a trailer for Borderlands 4.
Yeah, that's a good shout,
Um,
actually. I didn't think of them doing it that way, but yeah, that makes sense.
and I think honestly, the Borderlands trailer, I think you're going to have Eli Roth come out with one of the actors, because like Jeff Keighley loves to bring actors out. So I think you're going to have maybe Kevin Hart and Eli Roth, or you might even have the whole cast
Kevin Hart
come
would be
out
a good one, though. Kevin Hart would be a good
and
one.
come out, stuff like that.
Or
Especially if Kevin Hart comes out and starts talking about like Twitch subs and freaking out about it again.
who's doing Claptrap? Is that Jack Black?
Jack Black.
I feel like Jack Black might come out. Like, he feels like an easy, because he is a gamer himself, so that also kind of makes more sense. Yeah, it's interesting because 2K, I actually think there could be a lot from 2K. I'm not saying there will.
Yeah,
I think there
I think
could
we
be.
probably also could get BioShock 4,
Hmm.
even if it's just like a tone piece.
And you know what? Weirdly, I actually think there's a chance that if it is coming out this year as reported, you could get the 2K FIFA game, because that's the first time they would have had that license. And I know that people don't love sports games, but I think for the first time that that license has ever changed hands, that's kind of a really big moment. And getting the first look at their version of a soccer/football game is kind of a big thing. And I just don't know if that game is coming this year. I don't know where else 2K would put it. So
You put the Video Game Awards if it's going to come out next year as well.
true.
But
And then the other thing is there has been some question marks over potentially a new Mafia game. So would we see potentially a tease from that? Who knows? I think there's a lot of possibilities for 2K. I think Borderlands is almost a certainty, just because it's been a while now, and with the movie and stuff happening as well, I feel like it's the right time to at least confirm the existence of a new Borderlands game. Yeah, we'll see on that one. Is there anything else you think we might see at Summer Games Fest?
I think we could probably finally see Project 007, because it's been like a bit over 3 years. I think seeing what they're kind of working on with that, again, even if it's like a tone piece.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say because I think they're self-publishing it, and I know Jeff Keighley is like wanting your firstborn as like cost for putting trailers on there.
Yes, yeah.
So it's hard to say exactly.
One smaller thing that I do think we'll get, but they haven't confirmed for certain, but they have been teasing, and that is, I think we'll get our first look at the Alan Wake 2 DLC.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that's gonna happen.
think Sam Lake had not announced something about Summer Game Pass, so I think we're going to finally see that. We might even maybe finally see the Max Payne remasters as well too,
I
or
would love a
remakes.
look at that because that's meant to be coming fairly soon. Like this, so I would love a
Yeah.
look at those.
I think in regards to like Capcom, I think that we'll probably get the first look at like Dragon's Dogma 2 DLC in
Mhm.
regards to what they're going to do there. Um, Sorry, Sugar is moving my mouse around here.
That's okay. The
Oh,
cat is
nope, she's got my
playing.
hand.
The cat is
She's
playing
got my hand.
havoc with our show, people.
Yeah. Well, she's an executive producer, so she wants to pull the plug on the episode. She can, right? Yeah. Okay. I think we could probably see the next Resident Evil remake. I don't think we'll see like both, but I think we will get a. Um, I think Code Veronica is likely going to be the first one as opposed to Zero.
Okay, interesting.
Um, but I think we would get a maybe a again like a basic trailer,
The other thing about
kind
that
of what they've
is I
done
feel
before.
like if that game's coming out soon, it's probably like a January or February game. And I think that showing it for the first time here would make a lot of sense because otherwise you wait until the Game Awards, but then that's very late if the game is coming out early next year. That would be very late to be like, oh yeah, we've just revealed it and it's out next month. Like
Yeah,
that doesn't normally happen.
yeah. I think there's a good possibility we see the new Tomb Raider game by Amazon.
Interesting. I hadn't have thought about that one, but there's a reason I think we won't. And I know that Crystal have different teams, but this kind of plays into the Xbox thing. I think that Crystal are obviously working on Perfect Dark, and I feel like Perfect Dark is probably going to show up in the Xbox Showcase, and therefore I'm not sure Crystal will want to show both of their things on the same weekend. I think they might want to space them out a bit.
Yeah, I think with the Tomb Raider one, there's been a lot of talk, especially with like the movie, or the series or whatever it is,
That's true.
coming out.
That's true. I feel like
Um,
for me, I feel like Tomb Raider might be one that's saved for the Game Awards because that series isn't coming till next year, right? So showing it at the Game Awards potentially makes more sense, I think.
yeah, could be.
Um as for other things, it seems like maybe we're going to get Skate turning up at SGF. They've
Yeah,
been
they
teasing a few things.
yeah they kind of went quiet for a while after being very transparent about a bunch of things.
Yeah. I think they had
Yeah,
to
I
though,
could see
right?
them coming up.
Because you have to go quiet for a while to actually do your job. um, but I feel like because that game was announced 4 years ago, I think, maybe longer
Something
than
like
that.
that.
Um, so I feel like even with delays and stuff, and with everything the world's been through, that game can't be that far away. Like again, I can imagine that being a first half of next year kind of
Yeah.
release. Um, so yeah, but other than that, there's not. I think we'll see some DLC stuff. Like another thing we could potentially see from PlayStation, but I don't know if they're definitely going to do it, is Spider-Man 2 DLC. Um, you could see something like that. I think we'll see DLC looks and that sort of thing for Summer Games Fest. I'm I'm interested in Summer Games Fest, but I would say that if we look at the history of the show over the last few years, it tends to be up and down in the sense of they will occasionally have a very big moment, like showing Elden Ring and like The Last of Us Part 1 remake was meant to be a big moment, but obviously it leaked and that kind of took some of the luster away from it slightly. Um, but Jeff is saying that they don't have a big moment this year, so the fact that he's sort of playing down those expectations, either he's keeping something very close to the chest and wants to play down expectations to kind of shock people, or it's genuinely just going to be one that's more focused on, because one of the things he said is that the show is more focused on things we already know about, and I think that is just less exciting for people, personally.
Yeah.
But unless we have any other kind of massive predictions that we feel like might show up at SGF, I think we can probably move on to the Xbox Showcase.
Sure.
Well, obviously on Sunday, 6 p.m. here in Britain, and whatever time that correlates to in your time zone.
Yeah, I think it's 11 a.m. for me.
Xbox are having their showcase. And there have been some reports recently, so before we get into kind of predictions here, I want to say a couple of things. One is, I have heard a few things, but nothing I mention here will be anything that I've heard. I won't be talking about anything that I've heard whispers of or things like that. And then, secondly, Jeff Grubb reported on Kind of Funny that the show was going to be roughly 2 hours long and have 30 games in total. And then there was a report from Tom Warren of The Verge today, where he said that he expects to see more than 15 first-party games from Xbox in their showcase, with most of those coming this year and next year. So,
yeah.
And the other thing is, Jeff Grubb also said that he believes that at least 5 of the games that are going to be shown are things that we've never even heard about before. So it sounds like they've got a pretty packed show coming, Jeff.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, I guess we should get the obvious ones out of the way, right? They're on the thumbnail for this episode. We're gonna.
I think we're gonna see Gear 6. I think we're gonna see more Avowed. And then we'll see another trailer for Indiana Jones, which I think we'll see more gameplay.
Yeah, so I've got a question on Indiana Jones, so let's start there. Do you think that game still comes this year, or do you think it's delayed into next year?
No, I think it comes this year.
Okay, interesting. And same for Avowed? Do you think Avowed still makes this year?
Yep.
Okay. That's... I would like those ones to be out of the way early in the show, if it was me. I think get the known quantities out of the way, especially if you have that many things. Yeah, I think they'll end with Gear 6, especially if the reports are true that it's going to be something that genuinely wows people, because, Coalition, Unreal 5 Masters, like... Maybe they're gonna have a big moment here with Gear 6. And then obviously we know Call of Duty is gonna show up. We know that that's having its own showcase directly after the Direct. But I do think they will have some sort of short trailer during the main Direct. Kind of how they did with Starfield last year, where they have a trailer which then says tune in after to find out more details. I can see that kind of thing happening. So now that we've got the obvious ones out of the way, what else do you think we might see this year, Jeff, from Xbox?
So I got 7. I got 7 predictions.
Oh, okay. I've got a few as well. So let's go one to one here. You go first.
Sure. I think we'll finally see Everwild. I think that game has been in such MIA capacity that I think we'll finally see it, and it is a first party title.
Interesting. Yeah. That's it could. I'm a little up and down on Everwild, just because we know that game has faced some problems, and it at one point did restart development entirely, I think, and become a slightly different game. However, at the same time, it's been long enough that I wouldn't be surprised to see it. I'm gonna start with one that I think will show up. And and I think a lot of other people are kind of on the same wavelength here, and that is State of Decay 3. I think we'll probably see the first
Oh, for
gameplay
sure.
for. I think that part of the reason for that will be there's been some reports recently saying that maybe the game is in a bad place, and then those reports were retracted pretty quickly. So those people clearly found something out that they didn't know previously. And I can see State of Decay 3 being a next year game. That's the other part of the reason. I think that it will have 2025 at the end of whatever they show us for State of Decay 3.
Yeah. I think. All right. So my next one here, I'm just gonna erase Everwild so I don't in the order here. Let's release or delete the Summer Games Fest ones. All right. I'm gonna get a big one out of the way.
Go on.
I think we are going to see, because of the partnership that Xbox has had with Atlas, I think we're going to see Persona 6. I think the first trailer for the green themed Persona 6, I think will drop during the Xbox trailer.
Do you think that that's going to happen even though they still have that Metaphor game coming out? Like, do you think we're more likely to see that, or would we see both potentially?
I don't think Metaphor will be at the Xbox One. I think that game's coming out relatively soon enough that it doesn't need that.
Interesting, okay.
Because it has its own thing, I think, happening today, as well too. Um, but no, I think we're going to see Persona 6. I think we'll basically just get like the basic theme. I think we'll see a bunch of characters. I think we'll see like little snippets of gameplay, and then it because I mean, here's the thing: it's a green themed Persona 6.
I mean,
Like
it has
all
to,
the
right? It
Personas,
makes sense.
right? If you're gonna show it in an Xbox event.
And also the other thing is, let's just be clear, Sega and Atlas have been very close to Xbox over the last few years now. Like,
Yeah.
Metaphor was revealed at Xbox's show. Persona 3 Remake was revealed at Xbox's show. That Persona 5 Tactics game was at Xbox's show, and 2 of those 3 were on Game Pass day 1. I think that there is a strong relationship there. I do have, while we're on that subject, because there was a small bit of news that we didn't have in the docket, but I think is worth bringing up. If you haven't played Octopath Traveler 2, it's now available on Xbox. It's released on Xbox and it is on Game Pass, so you can play that. And if you've never played Octopath Traveler 1, it's now available on PlayStation, which it wasn't previously. So that's a cool bit of news there. But it made me think, speaking of Atlas and those kind of games, do you think, before we go to kind of more of our predictions here, do you think that there's going to be any big third-party Game Pass Day 1 announcements? And if so, could you give me an example of one that you think might come?
For a third party one, I don't know, because like trying to think what's even coming out.
It's not going to happen, but how big would it be if they said Persona 6 was Day 1 on Game Pass?
I mean, it would be pretty intense.
Because
because of like how big that title is.
so there is one game, and I forget the name of it. I forget the exact name of it now, but I do think there's a chance that they confirm that Mana game that's coming up is going to be Day 1 on Game Pass.
I almost wonder if that if they'll negotiate a deal for that Wukong.
Oh, yeah, maybe. It's going to be interesting because they always have something, right? I'm gonna make another prediction here, and this one's a little bit out there. This is a bigger one, but it's in the realm of possibility of happening. I think that we might see a trailer and release date for Final Fantasy 16 on Xbox.
Yeah, I have written down Final Fantasy something.
I just
I
think
we'll get
if
a
we
trailer
look at Square have changed their strategy, and they've changed it so quickly that Octopath is now on PlayStation and Octopath 2 is now on Xbox. Like, they're not doing exclusives anymore. Like, that isn't going to happen. Apart from the ones that are kind of pre-contracted or still under existing contracts, there will be no more Square exclusives, I think.
With Octopath, yeah, if any of you guys watching have not played it, if you have a 3D TV, turn the 3D mode on, get a pair of glasses, play Octopath. It is stunning. Like, because like that game is a diorama, so when you apply the 3D effect, it is unbelievably cool. But yeah, I think we'll get Final Fantasy something. I don't think the remake will touch Xbox until the third one.
I agree.
But yeah, I could see 16.
I think 16 makes sense because it's now had all of its DLC as well. So you could release it, you could re-release it everywhere as a complete edition and tie that into this is the first time it's coming to Xbox.
Yeah. And I mean, it's possible that Xbox could have given Square Enix like a big cash flow and then put it on Game Pass or something.
True.
But yeah. I think my next one is I think we finally see what Contraband is.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think it's time. That game got announced not last year, but the year before, I believe.
Probably even sooner. Time's a weird construct now. Yeah, I think we're finally going to see that, and just see what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's made by Avalanche, isn't it? The team that made the Mad Max game and things like that. So it could be a good one, for sure. So it'd be interesting to see more details on that. What do I have here? Let me check my list, because I made a little list. Okay, so here's one, and it ties into something I have heard, but I haven't been able to confirm, and therefore I'm not going to say exactly what it is that I've heard. But what I will say is, I think there's a strong chance that we will see something Fallout which isn't Fallout 76 related.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I mean, it's definitely not going to be from Bethesda. So it would be like a third party. Like, I don't know. I think Fallout. I think if anything Fallout gets released within the next 2 years, it's mobile focused.
Interesting. Probably a good shout, but I think that they will have some sort of confirmation of something to just quell that audience a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Fallout Impact. Just waifus everywhere.
So, what other predictions do you have, Jeff?
Let's see. I think we're finally going to get a release date for the long-awaited, the long-delayed Replaced.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I
think we're finally going to get something for it. I mean, I would love to see, what is it, the last something tonight, or whatever that other game was that kept getting delayed as well. I can't remember the name of it.
I think it might have been called The Last Night.
Something like that, yeah.
It's a similar game, wasn't it? It was a similar style of game. Yeah, and to tag on to that one as well, this wasn't one of my predictions, but talking about long-delayed games, and a game that is coming up relatively soon, but also I think people would probably enjoy another look at. I think we might see something from Stalker 2.
Yeah. Hard to say, just because, like, again, like, they're, the situation that they find themselves in.
Absolutely, but that game
hunkered down on the game more so than anything
else. Game has had a firm release date for a while now, though, so it wouldn't surprise me. And I also think, I've said it before, but it's going to be so interesting as to how that game is received and talked about, because I think that, yes, you should always talk about a game for what the game is, but it's such a weird situation because they've developed it during a war. So it's kind of like, how much consideration do you give to the circumstances that they've had to deal with, you know? Because it's not a normal set of circumstances, is it? So,
No.
So yeah, it's interesting to think about in that regard. What else do I have here? Let me have a look. So, I think, well, I don't think, but I hope that we see. Do I think? Maybe I do. I'm hoping and thinking that we probably see more Fable here. And I
Yeah, I
think
think
it
that's
will
the
be
safe bet.
I think it will be actual gameplay this time. And then I think you may not get a concrete release date, but I think you probably will have a release window. For example, they might say spring 2025. You'll have some kind of release window on that, I think.
Here's my prediction for Fable. We see Fable, and they announce another big name celebrity being added to the cast, and it's Matt Berry.
If it's Matt Berry, I will lose my mind.
Like, that'd be so funny.
If they put Matt Berry in Fable, I will lose my mind. Like, that'll be it.
I mean, you already have like, was it Moss from
yeah,
IT Crowd? But yeah, you add Matt Berry in there.
I could
You're
imagine
a
them.
genius.
I could imagine them maybe doing Chris O'Dowd as well, just because.
Yeah,
you know.
but like, if they did companions and Matt Berry was with you, like, on the journey, like if he played like a little like imp or something like
Yeah.
that was constantly with you, holy hell.
I
Game of the
mean,
year right there.
I'm just so excited to see more of that game, because thinking back to that original kind of cinematic gameplay-ish look, there was definitely gameplay in that trailer that they showed. It was just gameplay with no HUD, and I think that
Yeah.
if they can have that level of, you know, polish throughout the entire game, and if they do have more stars in it as well, and I'd imagine most of them are British stars, but you'll have to say to me, Jeff, like, is having British stars a sensible thing to do when this game is probably going to be very popular in North America, you know, in the US and Canada?
Yeah.
Are British stars well known over there?
To a certain extent, you know, I think. I mean, Fable's been notorious for being British. So I think, yeah, because I mean, like, you know, like, again, Matt Berry is like known the world over.
Yeah.
You know, the IT crowd, like, the very few people I talk to don't know what the IT crowd is.
That's
and
true.
When I say IT crowd, I mean the British version, not the crappy American version. Where they're like, yeah, we don't know how to do this. Let's just bring over Moss.
Do you know who I would really like to see, just as a kind of semi-serious, but I think you could use him in a comedic role, is Sean Bean. Just have Sean Bean as like someone that you even just see getting killed in the trailer or something, you know, just like a random, you know, like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of weird British things they could do. Yeah, I can't wait. I think that everything we've heard seems to suggest that game is 2025. And I think it's going to be a big one for them. Obviously, there is, and this kind of throws a spanner in the works of my predictions slightly, but because Xbox have now set up the thing of they do the developer direct in January every year, there is a chance that some of the stuff that's going to be next year, they will save for January. And I'm not sure whether Fable might be one of those things. Because
I think they'll show it.
Interesting. Okay. What do you have up next?
So I got two left. So one is Iron Man.
Ooh, okay,
Um,
interesting.
so EA's Iron Man. Um, I think we see that. Um, I don't know, like if if I was okay, if I was to make a wild prediction for Iron Man, and that is that they've actually like cast Robert Downey Jr., that would be like amazing. But no, I think it's about time we see Iron Man.
So I do have a big third party prediction, but it's one that I actually think is probably even more likely than Iron Man. And that is that they do something similar to what they did last year, and the um they show the first trailer for the Splinter Cell remake. Um I can
I think we'll
see
get that at Ubisoft Forward.
the reason I think it might be at Xbox's show is because that original Splinter Cell game was a timed Xbox exclusive.
Yeah,
And not only that, but other games, I think it was Conviction on the 360, was a full Xbox exclusive. So that is a Ubi franchise that actually has a lot of history
yeah,
with Xbox. And I just look at the way in which they revealed Star Wars Outlaws last year kind of made me think, oh, they might do the same thing, because UB Forward is going to be focused on Outlaws and on Assassin's Creed Shadows, you would imagine. So having Splinter Cell as a remake be able to get its own moment, I think would be quite a big thing. Um, but then one thing that puts me off of that prediction is all of this talk about how many first party games there are, because if they're having more than 15 first party games in their show, like I'm a little bit like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much third party stuff we're even going to get. you know,
yeah.
it's
Well, my last prediction is first party.
go on then. What have you got?
If okay, so I think they're going to close the show out with Gears, but if they don't, I think they closed it out with Banjo Kazooie.
Oh,
Phil had talked a couple years ago, basically how he knew
saying
that
that
there was
we've heard you, right?
a clamoring for it.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think um, I think Banjo Kazooie, and here's the thing, I think it is just a tone piece. I don't think there's gameplay or anything like that, and I think Banjo Kazooie is the collaborative project with Toys from Bob. So
So I'm with you on the Banjo thing. I don't think Banjo is the Toys for Bob game. I think
yeah,
it's
I am split on that particular part, but it just like when I'm thinking of
yeah.
like who would be ideal to make that.
I think that it's fairly clear that the Toys for Bob game is Spyro. I'm pretty certain
Yeah,
that the Toys for Bob game is going to be Spyro. I think there is a chance, and it's a small chance, but I think there's a chance that Double Fine is making a Banjo game.
yeah,
Like, I don't know why. I think that because actually, I think there's a chance that Double Fine will show up here with one of their smaller games, because they sometimes make a smaller game.
yeah. My, the only reason I wouldn't think it would be them is because for me, Banjo Kazooie needs to be a visually stunning platformer. And Double Fine has had aesthetically pleasing games, but they've never been a studio known for graphical fidelity.
That's true. That's a good point. How funny would it be? And this isn't gonna happen, but how funny would it be if it's rare? like, that would be an interesting moment. So
Yeah,
so I have a few more predictions here.
sure.
So well, just first party things to talk about really that we haven't spoke about that much. I think there's a strong chance that Clockwork Revolution shows up here. I think it's another one that could be held for that January developer direct, but again, this feels like a game that's further along than we think it is, and probably is a next year game as well. I can imagine their next year, you know, if Tom Warren is talking about them having more than 15 first party games, and the majority of those games being either this year or next year releases, I think there's a strong chance that next year they have Clockwork Revolution, Fable, and a few other things, right? I think next year probably will be quite a strong year for them.
Yeah.
I think there's even a chance that Gears 6 is next year, right? Like, so that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Another one, obviously we're gonna see Flight Sim. We didn't talk about that, but they're gonna show some sort of Flight Sim trailer again because the new game is coming out later this year. There has been a rumor that they'll shadow drop a game, and if they do that, I think it will be Towerborn. I think I can see Towerborn kind of shadow dropping because they said that was a summer release anyway. That was always reported to be a summer 2024 release, and it just makes sense to me that a smaller co-op based game like that would probably do quite well as a shadow drop. And then I think after that there's just so many things they could do, right? There's so many. This is one of the most exciting things about Xbox from my perspective, is that they have so many projects at this point that we have no, like, we've heard there's going to be 5 things that we've never even heard of, you know, and it's like, how many of those are going to be first party? How many of them are going to be third party?
Yeah.
You know, it's really, really interesting to think about because they have so many teams at this point that it's crazy. Like, it's, you know, people often joke of like Xbox is carrying E3 on their own, and Greg Miller kind of made the point the other day of like, there's almost no way that this show can be bad. But I think that's kind of true, because they have so much stuff at this point that even if not everything is for you, they're probably going to have something for you. Like, the Starfield DLC is going to show up here. We know that for pretty much certain. You know, they're probably going to flash up that upcoming Fallout 76 DLC as well. I think there's a lot that they're going to do, and I think this is going to be a strong show. If I was to put an expectation on it score-wise, to kind of leave myself open for being surprised and being wowed, I think that my expectation is an 8 out of 10 right now. I think they're going to have a great show, but I think they have room to have potentially an exceptional show. Where are you feeling about the Xbox show?
Probably a little higher.
Okay.
You know, I think this is their show to kind of impress, because again, like, a lot of these games have been delayed because of COVID and a variety of different things. But yeah, I think probably just a little bit higher.
Fair. That makes sense to me. Well, that has it for our predictions. Obviously, if you're watching this after Summer Games Fest, we're going to try and get it out to you before that, but obviously you may be watching it after. Let us know in the comments how many Summer Games Fest predictions we got right, and then also let us know what are your predictions for the upcoming Xbox Showcase. And we will cover all of that news in a couple of weeks' time after I'm back from Clash at the Castle. Obviously, if you want to jump out now, that's fine. Just don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. But for now, before we end this episode, we're going to talk a bit about what we've been playing. I guess I'll go first because I've been playing the least things. And
Sure.
I've mostly been playing X Defiant. But I have downloaded a few things that I am going to play, and one of those things is Disco Elysium, uh, which I picked up for like £3 or something. It was crazy cheap, and I've heard nothing but good things about it, but I've never played it. And obviously, then they did the Final Cut version with the voice acting and all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, okay, I might as well give it a go. So I think I'm gonna play that next, because I picked that up on PC, and I'm obviously using a PC that I'm gonna be reviewing in the next couple of weeks' time. After I do the X Defiant review for Outer Haven, and then I've got a little gap of time where I don't really have anything to write about, so I'm thinking I might sink a week or two into Disco Elysium. But the other thing that I really want to play, and we must make some time to play this, Jeff, is Lords of the Fallen, because I've heard that the co-op is good, and I really want
Oh,
to see good
amazing.
co-op in this kind of game. so so I need to try that out. I've downloaded that on Xbox. It of course is on Game Pass now, so you can go and check that out for yourself. And I believe, Jeff, we have a review on the site that you did, don't we? But other than that, what have you been playing? Because I know you've been playing a few things.
Yeah, so I'll get the main one kind of out of the way here. So we got granted code for checking out the Rogue Prince of Persia. So generally we don't review early access games just because we generally don't revisit reviews. So once that game hits 1.0, I will be doing a full review for it. I'm currently playing it on the Steam Deck. It runs incredibly well. So this is made by Evil Empire. They're the same team that did Dead Cells, and you can feel that influence here as well too. It's also a franchise that felt like it was really going to benefit the roguelike just because like it has that kind of Dead Cells nature already when you take a look at like the history of Prince of Persia in regards to like some of its 2D roots being a platformer. It works extremely well. Everything is kind of hand drawn, so it doesn't have that pixelated kind of feel that Dead Cells had. Um, but the artwork and everything is fantastic. I don't know why the prince is purple. Like people generally don't have skin tones kind of in this game. Everyone's kind of different colors. Um, but it is neat. Like the game is very, very cool. It's got really, really good music as well too. So it's got a clean art style at conveying kind of like what and where you need to go, what you can interact with. It's got a wall running system and stuff. It's got everything where you can kind of bounce from like extended poles to other platforms. Um, it's got a lot of really good maneuverability and mobility. Like you feel like you are constantly kind of moving in that game, and it handles it extremely well. Like the wall running, for example, is how you defeat the first boss. It's like this minotaur type of monster, and you kind of like wall run up and then use like a slam down on the attack to like break the shield, and then attack and dodge and stuff off him. And it's neat because like you'll go through and you'll unlock um secondary starting positions. So you can either go through the one that you start at, or you find information about like the Huns like base, and then you can start there instead. So it gives you a lot of variety in regards to where you can start and where you can go. Very similar to Dead Cells. Like this game feels very similar, and
I mean, that's
it's
not a
in their
bad thing,
wheelhouse.
right?
Yeah, Dead Cells is a damn perfect game. Um, so yeah, you have like so you kind of start with like daggers, which is they're kind of just like a very quick and agile kind of weapon. You have a dash special attack, a bow, a kick, a downward slash. Kicks you can like kick enemies into like spike traps or into their buddies or off cliffs and stuff like that. You get additional weapons as well. There's like axes, spears, like all that stuff, and then you can find um, weapon pickups to pick them up better. So if you're doing 2 attack and you find a new sword, it may do 5, and you'll want that stuff because like the bosses are extremely challenging. Like the gameplay leading up to the boss is very simple. but the boss itself is a huge skill check. Um, you also get equipable powers like these medallions, and you can kind of like craft more as well too by getting these like this like purple currency. And then if you find like a pool, then you can deposit that currency and it goes into your permanent retainer. If you don't, then it sits up there, and if you die, you lose it. And then you take that purple currency to various NPCs, because every single time you die, like in Hades, the hub world that you respawn back into changes and upgrades to like having additional characters
Yes.
and a different shops and things like that, where you can build um, better things essentially. Um, so it feels like the Dead Cells gameplay, but with like the Hades appeal of death merely adds more content to the game and
Yes.
it pushes
Yeah.
the story forward. And you get new dialogue and new progression systems and all sorts of stuff every single time you die. So it feels like every single death is purposeful in pushing that game along. Um, it also does like the thing where you can like teleport from like um, place to place and stuff when you unlock them. And there's teleporters like all over the place. The maps themselves are kind of like, I think, procedurally generated in regards to like how the pathing kind of works, where you can find tons of little secrets and chests and all sorts of stuff.
Who
Um,
thought, Jeff? Who thought that this was going to be the year that we got two good or above Prince of Persia games?
it feels like, honestly, it like this one's in early access, so it hasn't actually officially released yet, and we don't know the exact time. But it feels very weird to have two Prince of Persia games released so back to back, kind of in a way.
Yeah.
Um, but no, like this, honestly, I think that this one is shaping up to be better than Lost Crown.
Wow, that's quite
And
a statement.
like it it plays, like, honestly, it plays so fluid, and like the hand drawn stuff looks fantastic. Again, I'm not sold on the prince being purple. Um, the Prince of Purple. Um, but no, like it plays extremely well. Like it's very, very fluid. It's super quick. It runs like an absolute dream on the Steam Deck. Um, but no, it is so far with what I've kind of played of it. I've gone through probably around 6 or 7 runs. I've defeated the Minotaur once, actually twice. And so I'm continuing to kind of push through that stuff. But if you liked Dead Cells, I do suggest trying this game out. I will say the view is very pulled back compared to Dead Cells. So like the game I think runs so well because the detail I think is lost a lot when you're pulling back so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's got these like,
I've seen a bit of the gameplay, and I will say that I initially was sort of skeptical of this game, and the more that I hear about it and the more that I see it, it's definitely one that I'm interested in checking out at some point. Um, because yeah, it just like you said, if you like Dead Cells or that kind of game, this is shaping up to be another very good one, right?
yeah, like it's literally Dead Cells in a lot of ways. Like into like, I think like the first level you go into, I think is called the Ramparts, which is basically, I think, like Dead Cells had as well. You check out our Dead Cells review. I believe I gave it a 10. Like, yeah, like this game is shaping up to be extremely well crafted. I think that the team behind it knows exactly what they're doing. Um, and yeah, it plays incredibly fluid. The combat is really nice. Like you get like different abilities and stuff, and like enemies have shields, so you basically drop down and shatter the shield. Um, and it plays extremely fluid. Like it is a extremely polished game. Like even in early access, I think seeing this game kind of grow is going to be interesting. Um, but yeah, no, I've had a great time checking out. And again, like once that game hits 1.0 and official release, I will have a review ready to go for that game as well. Although I don't believe there's been a release date given on when that's going to show up, because early access kind of gives them the benefit of providing a game out to play and then doing kind of what they want with it, much
So
like
that
Hades too.
so that gives me a question to you, Jeff, before you move on to what else you've been playing. Just because I think it would be nice for people to hear this as well as me. Um, so obviously we don't normally revisit games, and that's why we don't kind of review early access games. And part of that is because we also don't have as much time as maybe some other people. Um, um, but what would we do for a release like? So we spoke about earlier, for example, Atlas Fallen, who are literally overhauling their entire game. It seems like.
Yeah.
How would we tackle something like that?
I think talking about it on the podcast is probably the best way, just because we don't have to then, spend time kind of working on a re-review or
Yes.
updating anything. So I think attaching it on the podcast, like I'm
Well,
gonna be
there
putting
you
up the news
go. That
article
there's
today.
a strong reason to make sure you're subscribed, because the same thing will happen with these early access games when we do play them. And I'm sure me and Jeff, for example, will both play Hades 2 at some point, and we'll be talking about that here because, like we said, we don't release reviews until full release of a game. And therefore, the only place you're going to hear about early access games from us is here on the podcast, the Gaming Mix podcast. So please make sure you're subscribed. But Jeff, what else have you been playing? I believe you played a little demo, right?
For which one? Sorry.
Did you play a demo in the end? You were telling me you were going to play a demo.
I'm trying to remember which one that would be. I'm not 100% too sure.
Oh, okay,
I'm
interesting.
completely blanking.
Fair enough. What else do you have
Um,
then?
yeah, so I'm going to be putting out a review out hopefully today for Rip Out. Um, so Rip Out is this okay, so it's a first person shooter in a sci-fi kind of environment. It has a very like almost like Doom 3 kind of darker tones as opposed to what Doom ended up being. So it's got that kind of feel to it. So it's got like a flashlight because everything is so dark and you're on like the kind of derelict vessels and ships and stuff like that. Because like the story essentially is um, Earth basically got in a battle with an alien invasion, and they created this type of technology to like outfit their soldiers to be able to combat this evil. But the problem is this technology then overtook them and pretty much wiped out Earth to the point where they had to evacuate Earth and find like a Goldilocks planet essentially. And you come out of cryostasis and you're trying to track down kind of like what happened to humanity and all this kind of stuff. And you play as kind of like the last perfect soldier of what that program was supposed to have done. And it allows you to essentially take these little creatures and kind of like augment them to your shoulder and then use them as weapons. So it has kind of like this like Pokemon type of thing where you have a gun that has a creature on it and you throw the creature out and then that creature grabs it and brings back the other creature and then you're dealing with like dual creatures. And these creatures will like heal you. They'll work as missile launchers. They'll work as a shield generator. Like they work on all these types of things. And it's an interesting mechanic, but it's the only original thing this game has because every ship you're going on feels like the same ship. It's got that like you're landing in the same hangar bay, you're going through the same door, you're going down the same hallways. Occasionally you'll get a kind of a bigger room that has elevation and stuff, but it all feels like the same mission. And the gameplay loop essentially is collecting resources to then build better gear, which has an artificial kind of feel to it because it's a first person shooter. You don't see what the gear looks like. Aside from like a mannequin, that's the only time you ever see it. There's no cutscenes or anything to kind of show that armor off. So the loop itself is not terribly interesting because the gameplay itself is not interesting because everything feels like it's just the same mission. It does have co-op, which is kind of the saving grace. I played a couple rounds of co-op with a variety of people. Some have been co-op of people playing in Japan, so I have no idea what the mission is
Oh
because it's
wow.
all just all like Japanese like text in the top. Other than it'll say like, have Japanese for what it is, and then it'll say like, go to the ship. I don't know what the mission is, you know? Like I don't understand that why when you're joining another person's game from another country, it just doesn't give you the text for
For what
you,
you have selected, yeah, that seems like a
right?
weird choice.
And the game feels only built for co-op, and yet only built for single player.
Oh, that's
Oh,
weird.
I know the demo. I know the demo you're talking about, and I'll talk about it after.
Okay.
Um, because the game, like you have one revive as a solo player, and then you die and mission's over. But the problem is the world is designed in a way where you can easily get stuck on things, and some of the big enemies, even if you're playing on easy, will kill you in like 3 hits.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
it feels like it's too hard for single player. But then when you play on co-op, it almost has the same amount of enemies, so then it doesn't feel as
Is not skilled.
tense
Yeah.
for co-op.
Yeah.
So it here again, I'm having difficulties kind of scoring it because like I like the gameplay, I like playing it, um, like, but at the exact same time, the loop is not satisfying because the gameplay is not satisfying because the procedurally generated tile sets of these ships just make it feel like you are doing the exact same fucking thing all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's really boring about it because I think that there is an excellent game here, um,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's executed well enough.
That's a shame. That's a shame when that happens because it does seem like the core of what they want the experience to be is there, and like you said, it just seems to be let down by the execution, which is a shame. But what else have you been playing recently?
Yeah, so a demo has come out for one of my most anticipated games, and that is Trails Through Daybreak, which just launched a demo on PS4 and Switch. However, the Switch version apparently is a shorter demo just because of the size of, I think, what they can have max for a demo. I'm not 100% too sure. But I'm playing it on PS4. It's compatible with PS5, and this is a completely different take on the Trails games, because the Trails games all took place in Erebonia, and this one takes place in, I think, Calvard, which has been talked about, and you've seen characters from that franchise come into the Trails games through pivotal moments like the president of Calvard and all that kind of stuff. And basically, you play as a character named Van, who's kind of like a mercenary. He kind of does his own thing, even if it's legal or not legal. So he's not part of like um, the guilds or the police forces or anything like that. And you're approached by a woman named, I think it's Agnes. It looks like it's Agnes, but I think it's Agnes. And she is trying to track down a kind of an orbment device. And the game opens up essentially with that device being stolen and then stolen again. And then you basically then go on a mission to find it, and you find it, and that reveals like this gameplay mechanic where Van can turn into this almost like monster type of thing. Because like in the previous Trails games where you were playing as like Reem, he had a big mech. So instead of mechs, you're going to have these monsters. So I think like each person that gets added to your team, because you're tracking down, I think, 7 of these things, and I think there's 7 companions. So I mean, you can do the math. Where each of them are going to have their own kind of like monster variant. And I think that when you track down and fight them, you'll fight bosses that are in their variant, and then that device will then go to the next companion, I think. Um, this game's been out, I think, in Japan for like 2 years. I'm not 100% sure, but it's been
Interesting.
out for a
Okay.
while.
Okay.
And
That's
they
interesting.
redid all of the combat. So in the previous Trails games, they were always just turn-based,
Mhm.
and this one here, um, well, it's not true. Like they were always turn-based, but whenever you went into an area that had extremely weak enemies and you did that like attack where you could like get an advantage in battle if you hit
Mhm.
them from behind or
Mm.
whatever, those attacks would just kill regular little
Okay.
enemies. So what they've done in this game is you can take on any combat except for bosses or strictly turn-based battles and just fight them by slashing at them.
Oh wow.
But if you
Okay.
want to do any of the flashier attacks, like your arts and your abilities and
Mhm.
power moves and team up attacks, you have to do it in turn-based. So it's a neat mixture of both. Like it's not quite a hack and slash game otherwise, because again, you just have your basic attack.
Yeah.
But if you see a bunch of enemies and you're like, I don't want to go through all of the turn-based stuff, I just want to just defeat them quickly, you can just like start hacking and slashing at them and then kill them.
That almost reminds me of so in Like a Dragon, the most recent Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, you get to a
Yeah,
certain point where if you're a certain level and there are enemies that are weak enough on the street, it will,
yeah,
when you encounter them, it'll come up and you can press a button and it says Smackdown, and Ichiban will just start beating them with the bat, like not even in turn
yeah,
based, and they'll die in like 2 seconds. Or you can go
yeah,
into the turn based and have a proper battle.
yeah.
So
But no,
sounds
like, and the
similar.
one thing that's nice about it, and this is gonna sound like the dumbest compliment ever, but being able to turn the camera around when walking around in towns is just revolutionary,
Yeah, I bet it
because
is.
you kind of had like fixed angles and stuff when you were going around in towns and stuff like that. And yeah, like I love the Trail series. I think it's my favorite JRPG franchise like out there. So like yeah, I'm super
I've
pumped
never
because
played
like
it myself. So
I would say like I would say don't start, because like you have to go like everybody will tell you to start with like Trails in the Sky 1 and 2 and all that kind of stuff. And
oh,
if they did modern remakes of those, or an easy way to add voice acting
mhm.
into those, there's a patch, but I could never get it working. Like those ones, but like because I mean there's Trails to Steel 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
There's Trails from Zero, there's Trails from Azure, there's Trails from Reverie, and then going to this one. And you can go straight into this one, because like from what I've gathered and what I've seen is it loosely ties into the previous games,
Okay.
but not to a point where it would completely confuse certain people. When certain people show up, you may not necessarily know the history of those people,
Hmm.
but it's a fresh enough start that I think that people could jump into this and then go back.
Interesting.
But I
Interesting.
have heard that Trails from Daybreak 2 ties heavily into Trails and Reverie.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if
Interesting.
that's just complete bullshit, but um, no, it's nice. Like they've redone everything, because in the Trails games you use like the Arcus, which was kind of like almost like a fancy cell phone that essentially gave you like that's how your powers worked, where you could implement like gems into certain slots, and then that would power what you are.
Okay,
And this
interesting.
one here, they use something different. They use like the Zephia, which is like a very similar thing. You're still doing a lot of the same things, but the context around everything is different. Um, and they also have abilities where, like, if you are together, you'll have these like blue rings, and if you go away, then they fade out. But if you get close enough, they kind of connect, as long as there's like an intersect. And then that allows you to do like team up and special attacks and stuff. So again, it's the same things that we've seen in the Trails games, but they've added new context. All the menus are entirely different. But again, same concepts, but the execution for all of it is entirely fresh and new. And that's one thing that they really needed to do, because the Trails games and the Trails and Zero games, like they felt like the same basic games. And this one, since it takes place in a completely different area of the world, it allows the excuse for these things to feel new, because they don't have Arcus. They have Zephia or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really fun, and the demo is really long. I think it's the prologue and the whole first act.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a substantial update, and it's backwards compatible on PS5, and I think a
Mhm.
PS5 version will come out after launch. So I'm hoping they get code, because we've had good luck with Neum Falcom, but they have a new distributor for their stuff.
Ah, okay.
So
Yeah. Speaking of games that have a lot of content, I did see a funny piece of news just now, which is people are trying to suggest that Final Fantasy Online is a failure on Xbox because just months after release, it's not even in the top 40 or whatever it is selling games. But then
yeah,
a reporter made the point of like, on Xbox, it has the free trial, which contains literally hundreds of hours of content. So there are people that will still be playing the free stuff without having to buy any part of the game. So why would it be selling well?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that
that's the thing. Is like like that is a game that has kind of gripped the MMO landscape, and I think like it's doing extremely well because there's not too many successful MMOs on Xbox,
yeah.
and that could change as of Sunday. Um, but yeah, uh, no, like just my final thoughts on Trails Through Daybreak. I'm super pumped for this game to come out. Like, it's like an 80 to 100 hour game as far as I know. So I'm super pumped to play through this game because like I like the characters,
And
I
when
like the
is
voice
this?
acting
And
is
when
really
is this
good.
one coming out? Do we know? Do we have a date?
I think it's July 6th, I think is when the game comes out.
Okay.
So normally before I've had them about a month
So are
before.
you telling me that
Um,
that might be your game of the year, Jeff?
um, it could be. I mean, it would really, really have to bring it in the story department for me to kind of like take down Stellar Blade.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. Well,
Um,
well,
but no, I'm super pumped.
nice. Well, I think that's all we've been playing. And speaking of potential game of the years, I know people have been asking for when our half year kind of game of the year episode will be. So what's going to happen is no episode next week. The following episode will be catching up on all of these showcases and covering all of that news and kind of going through our thoughts on what actually happened and was shown. And the episode after that will be our half year kind of year in review episode where we tell you what our current game of the year is. We won't have an entire list, we will just have our current game of the year and maybe whatever we think is in second place, but we won't have like an entire list of 10 games because there haven't been enough releases yet. I just think it'll be a fun little thing to see where our minds are at halfway through the year and yeah. But for now, I think that's it. So please make sure you're subscribed. Like I said, I'm going to try and get you this episode as quickly as possible. So you're either seeing it just before Summer Games Fest or just after. Jeff, what did you want to say?
Also, like, do check out some of the reviews that we've been putting out on the site as well
Yes.
too. Because since the last episode, like, I have the review out for X Defiant. I have a review out for Iuden Chronicle, 100 Heroes. I put a review for Horizon Chase 2 as well, which is a fun little racing game. And then also put out the review for System Shock,
Yeah.
and it is really, really worth checking out.
And if you haven't, check out Hypercharge Unboxed as well because that game's selling fairly well on Xbox and there is a reason for it.
Yeah, it's like number 5
And
sales for the month or something.
and we've reviewed that game. Jeff's got a review up on the site. I'll link whatever Jeff's latest review is down below, so look for that one. And then yeah, just head over to the site because Jeff's done a lot of great work recently. I think you've put out like 4 reviews this week or something, isn't it, Jeff? So you've
I
done
think so, yeah, because like what was it? X Defiant was June 4th, IDN Chronicle was June 3rd, Horizon Chase was June 2nd, System Shock was June 2nd as well, and then Hellblade was May 30th, Hypercharge was May 30th.
wow. So Jeff has been putting in the work. I, of course, reviewed Hellblade over at Outer Haven, and I will be reviewing X Defiant shortly. I've written about half of my review on that so far, so you'll see that in the next few days. But yeah, for now, that's all we have for you. Hopefully you're watching this episode tonight, because, like I said, I'm going to try and get it to you before Summer Games Fest is on. But if you're not watching it till after, let us know in the comments what we got right from our Summer Games Fest predictions. Let us know what you're looking forward to from Xbox. And if you like, let us know what you'd like to see at the Ubisoft Forward, which is on Monday. But for now, that's it from me, and we will see you next time. So goodbye.